because people are queuing up to call right this minute to talk to my wonderful guest here. To my left, I have, if you like to introduce yourself, right?
Good evening. My name is George Merchant Ballantyne.
Of course, George, you've been in the Leicester scene for a long time, since 1924, if I can remember.
Yeah, even earlier than that. Yes,
Yeah.
1924. It's almost 25 minutes past 7. Yes, I've been around in Leicester or thereabouts since 1987, and I've spent most of that time involved, either employed in community diversity work or volunteering for it.
Of course, to my right, I have an aspiring, one of our community champions, Councillor Charmaine.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yes, my name is Councillor Charmaine Rahman. I'm ward councillor for Stonygate. Relatively new arriver to politics and the political world, but always done a lot of work in the community, both within my own community and outside with other communities as well.
That's wonderful. So I'd like to welcome both of you here today on Radio Ramadan on 87.7 FM. So we're going to get straight into it. We've got a lot of things to talk about here, right? We have a politician and we have George here who keeps an eye on all the politicians in Leicester, right?
From a distance.
So today, right, go on. We're going to first of all ask you, how are you getting on in your constituency right now in Stonygate, ward councillor?
Yeah, I'm getting on as well as can be. Obviously, we would like better, every local authority will tell you that they want better support from the government. Funding has been an issue for over a decade now. However, we're making the best of it. So we're making use of the community tools that we have, an excellent population that's constantly looking to help each other out. However, we're in a situation where the community is having to step in for perhaps where the government should have been stepping in, and that's not what we would like.
Now, when we say government, we've got to be more precise. So we're talking about local government, we're talking about national government, and of course, your constituency, from some of the research I did, has now increased somewhat, right? You've added more than 1,000 people in your area.
Yeah, and it's got various issues. And when I say the government, I mean the government, national government, because basically local authorities have faced a massive decline in their funding, which has affected the amount of work that we can do in the community. And specific to my ward in Stonygate, housing is one of the biggest issues that we face. It's certainly one of the biggest areas of casework that I receive. And I would like to see a big investment in building local housing for local people, and that's available with social rents. So I think that's one of the biggest sort of areas of concern for us.
I think you're going to have to take the word house out and replace that with a flat or an apartment, because we just don't have the land in the whole of the UK for houses. Our cities are now encroaching into our countrysides, and that's a problem throughout the country. So if anybody wants to speak to your local councillor, then you call here on Radio Ramadan 87.7 FM on 0116 4822 or you can send us a WhatsApp message and we can relay that to Councillor Charmaine on 077 488 55055. So are you ready for those questions?
I'm as ready as I can be.
You can be, yeah. Of course. Since it seems like we only meet here once a year.
I know.
We've been through almost 3 years of COVID, haven't we? Mask on, mask off, George, right?
Yep.
Are you on mask on today or mask off? As you can see, I'm ever ready here.
I've got one in my pocket, but I've stopped wearing it really because at one point people stared at you if you didn't wear a mask, and then they stare at you if you do wear a mask. I don't like people staring at me.
Well, you got to be like me, half a mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your chin is fully protected.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you got to do. You got to be ready all the time. And we've had to adapt to change, haven't we? We had to do that ATC. We call it here on the radio ATC, and we've had to adapt to change. And we have no option, do we? Do we have an option or do we have a choice? Which one is it?
I don't think there is a choice. I think the last 2 years have been so difficult for so many people. It's really difficult to put it into words how different people have been impacted by this situation. And people have been forced to sort of just put one step in front of the other and get on with the lot that they've been allocated. But again, I'm going to come back to that old saying that I've been saying since the start of the show. I think a lot more support was needed from the government and to help people get through the last 2 years. And yet now we face a cost of living crisis, so there's a lot of sort of pain yet to come. And I'm worried about some of the sort of vulnerable communities that yet have to face that.
Of course, we can be sitting here all day, all evening, criticizing the government, local government or national government, and it ain't really going to solve any crises that we have in our community, or not going to help our community development either. Right here, I'm looking at both of you, and neither of you have been listening in to the radio, have you? Have you caught up with the 3Ds that we are exercising on Radio Ramadan this year?
No.
Fill me in then.
What about you?
Please,
the 3Ds.
This is news to me, so please enlighten
come on,
us.
Guys, you got to listen in. You got to listen in. There's programs going on here every day, right? And the 3Ds is, what is it? First one is dedication. Mm-hmm. Second one is direction. And the third one is detoxify.
Lovely.
Right?
Lovely.
Excellent.
During the month of Ramadan, we've got to detoxify mentally, spiritually, and physically. Mm-hmm. So,
absolutely.
Of course, the merits of fasting is that when we fast, we detoxify, don't we? Like the first 10 days, second 10 days, and the last 10 days, and the body is repaired. Because throughout the year, the body works very hard, where we are eating, scoffing, and at the time of Ramadan is the detoxify. Yeah. And then also a spiritual awakening is necessary, isn't it, for all of us, right? When we see around us, what are we surrounded with? We're surrounded with war in up to 10 countries at any one time, right? Right this minute, there are 10 countries ravaged with war.
Yes.
Right? So we sometimes talk about the one that is on TV or on the Sky News or on the social media. I'm talking about Ukraine, but we forget about all the other countries where are also ravaged with war. Don't we, George?
Indeed. Well, it's, a lot of people have been woken up to this thing of, someone very close to me even said, am I a racist? Thinking about themselves and the reaction to it, because they realised that they were responding to what's happening in Ukraine much more deeply, much more effectively than they know what's going on in other countries, but it wasn't touching them inside. So they said, what's wrong with me that I only feel this when it's people like me that this is happening to? And it's making a lot of us question our assumptions about common humanity and fellow feeling and sympathy that's supposed to cross boundaries and such like. I mean, from my perspective as someone who's not a Muslim, I've always admired the concept and practice of the ummah, that mother community, as it were, that transcends all kinds of barriers of academic qualification, economic standing, colour, language, the way that someone dresses. But this is one central core thing that binds them all together in unity and sympathy and working for each other, feeling for each other. But many people who just don't have that kind of foundation are really questioning some of the most basic beliefs about themselves because of the way that they see the war interpreted. Somehow this is a bigger war, or, sorry to say it this way, a better war to watch than what's happening to people who are not like them.
The thing is, it's encouraging that people have that realization, that they notice that difference in response. And what I would say to that is that actually a lot of this sort of inconsistency or racism, if you would like to call it, that is actually top down. So quite often what people respond to is the way they see politicians or the media reflect on these victims and how differently they reflect on these victims compared to non-white victims, for instance. And that actually kind of simmers down into the population, and without them even realizing it, they end up echoing what they see in the papers and in the media. And it's not necessarily sometimes, intended racism or intended difference in treating different communities in different ways.
Of course.
It's basically what's all around us.
Well, that brings me on. Sharmeen has just reminded me, is what we call here the big con, right? Big con. Now, are you familiar with the big con?
No.
So this is the 1C to add to the 3 Ds that you're talking about.
The 3 Ds, Now, memorize them, yeah? I'm going to do a little test on you. What was the first D mean?
Danger, delight. No, it was detoxification was the third one.
That's
Dedication.
Dedication.
Was the second one?
Yeah.
Direction.
Direction was the second one. The
said
first
those
one
without moving my lips.
was dedication.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to remember them. But of course, I also would like you to become interactive part of this radio by inventing your own 3Ds.
3Ds.
It's a homework for you as well.
Okay.
You go home, sit with the husband and the children, and come up with your own 3Ds. They might be better than the ones we have.
I'm sure my kids will be
Conjured up
really
here.
excited with an extra piece of homework. I'll get them on it.
You do that, and then we can make it interactive. I'm going to give you both another homework to do, right? So you can be part of this partnership. That your boss, he loves partnerships, right? Sir Peter Soulsby, what does he say? He loves partnerships with the community and with the commercial sector, right? So one of the partnerships that we're going to create now here is that we get people to come and do iftar here during the month of Ramadan. So you bring a crew from your workplace, from people that you know, who we can tell them a little bit more about Ramadan, and they can enjoy the spirituality of Ramadan. How's that?
That sounds like a good
A little
plan.
homework
Yeah.
says your husband, he'll come along, maybe the children, and yourself as well, George. You've got a little crew as well. You can bring
a
along.
little crew, little
Yeah?
people. Yes. I'm a big fan of iftar.
So
I've missed
we
iftar
got-
over the past few years.
We got about 28 days left, and or 27, and you can book a day. And
Oh,
so-
absolutely.
right?
Sounds like
Is
a
that-
good plan.
So that's how we're going to do our community engagement. We're going to put it to a true test by putting different nationalities, different diversities on the table of 30. Yes? So how's that?
That
No.
sounds like an excellent
No,
plan.
we're not doing just radio. We are working here.
It's a literal table. I've seen the table.
Yeah, we're working here. We are doing the MAD here. The MAD is the MAD, make a difference.
Okay.
And we can make a difference. Now we have a call, if you'd like to put it through to me. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Zed. This is Hussein.
Yes,
I just
Brother
want
Hussein,
to
how are
say
you?
that
Yeah.
I'm very good. Thank you very much. I just want to second what how brilliantly Councillor Charmaine had really put it. It's not about our own individual racist attitudes that we should question. It is what is coming down from the top, the media, which is causing us to concentrate on this issue or that issue. Now, all wars and victims of wars are important, but the way that the conversation or the agenda is set is really set by the media. Now, in Yemen, there are 11 million children who are starving. And this is according to UNICEF UK. They have an ad running to support and to feed young children in Yemen. Yet the media chooses to ignore this because the powers that be have a vested interest in keeping the conflict going on in Yemen. Why is Yemen not being talked about?
Of course.
It's been going on for 6 years, not 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Why is Yemen not being talked about?
Well,
the
there's
US
there's
and
a lot
the
of
UK
whys.
and other countries who claim democratic and humanitarian values are party to this war. But it's not being talked about. Just remind your listeners about this, please. That's what I wanted to say this evening.
Okay, right, Brother Hussein. Thank you very much for that call. Charmaine,
Thank
you have a word to say to Hussein?
I follow I've been trying to follow the Yemen crisis myself, and I've asked this question myself. Why are we not talking about Yemen? It is a catastrophe that's unfolding in Yemen, children dying, starvation, mass starvation. And yeah, he's absolutely right. It's not getting the coverage that we should be getting. It should be getting, because there is an absolute catastrophe unfolding there. And I agree with him. There's not really much I can add aside from the fact that I won't stop talking about Yemen. I won't stop talking about other global issues, and I'll encourage others and push others to do the same. But he's absolutely right on the fact that we haven't spoken enough about the issue, and there's clearly a sort of motivation by the government to sort of stay out of it because of the partnership with Saudi Arabia and the fact that we're now probably going to go. We have already gone with our begging bowls asking for more energy from Saudi Arabia. So the government has chosen to rely specifically more on Saudi Arabia for energy and oil, and that is perhaps feeding into the fact that we're not actually talking about Yemen.
Of course, that really is a shocker. It kind of puts the brakes on your whole thought process. And Brother Hussain, I'd like to thank you for that. I think Charmaine has made a good point there. So we'll catch up with you again. Thank you very much for calling. Oh, he's gone. He's gone already. Yeah, his money ran out on the coin box. He was calling from the red coin box. Well, we were going to say earlier on, the big con, right? The big con is all about asking everybody out there listening in right now, what is the meaning of integration, right? I've been here since 1972. Once upon a time, 50 years ago. That was easy to work out, Charmaine. 1972, 2022, 50-year gap. Yeah. Once upon a time, 50 years ago. We came here 50 years ago, and we have been coexisting, right? Haven't we? In 50 years. We've all been coexisting, right? And we have integration. Now, the question to both of you first, George, are we coexisting and are we integrating, or is it the big con?
Well, this is one of my favourite subjects. And on another radio station, the beginning with the initials BBC, right?
Another radio station? This is the one and only, George.
And on BBC Radio Leicester, I won't be coy about naming it, several years ago, on a phone-in, a member of the public accused me of being a diversity extremist. And when he was asked, what did he mean by that? He says, well, he obviously cares about diversity and he actually likes diversity. And I was going, yeah, okay, I'll accept that. The notion of diversity has a different meaning if you're living in the middle of it. Whether if you observe it from the outside, a kind of academic or a media point of view. And I do hope that we can get a wee bit more deep into that subject in this hour, because it is one of us. I've brought some.
Right, we don't have an hour. We have 27 minutes and 0.2 seconds. Now,
I'll get back to it then, because the actual terminology that's used is really important. And with terminology, it changes from year to year or decade to decade. And some of the things that we still use today were meaningful years ago, but they have a different kind of meaning now when they're used. I will come back to that because it's a bit specialist, but I still think it's very interesting, very accessible, but I don't want to just grab on to that right now.
Of course, Charmaine, what is your view on that coexistence and integration? Is that equals bliss in the world of diversity?
It's a very loaded question.
Everything is loaded on radio.
Yeah. I don't have the same sort of academic, probably, knowledge with regards to integration as George does. But I can say what I see. And I feel like Leicester is a good model of integration and diversity and of mutual respect and of everyone sort of generally living in peace with each other and with respect with each other. So in that respect, I'm very, very happy to be to call this city my home.
Of course, that's where we were talking about the big con, that we think that because we coexist, that we are integrated, when in reality, we are not. So this is
how deeply do we want to be integrated?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could imagine that, if someone said to you, what's your relationship with your spouse? And you said, well, we coexist peacefully. That would sound like your expectations from the marriage are somewhat low. Shall we say. The word that's used so much about Leicester is multiculturalism. And it's been highlighted for, some of the media from overseas. The New York Times did an article about this. About 5 years ago, the London School of Economics named Narborough Road as being the most multicultural street in the whole of the UK. The man who invented that term multiculturalism as a political term, a fellow called Ted Cantle, He promoted that, and it was taken up by the new Labour government in particular. But some years ago, about 5 years ago, he came to the conclusion that multiculturalism no longer served its purpose, because in multiculturalism, in kind of political, economic or social terms, that's that coexistence you were talking about, Zed. Things go along side by side. You have the Sikh community doing its own thing, the Hindu community doing its own thing, the Jewish community doing its own thing, the Muslim community doing its own thing. Sorry if I left anyone out. They don't, but they've got their own channels that they operate in, and it's easy to manage on a spreadsheet. You apply for funding, you have a project manager. This is all very local government oriented. And then you have the project comes to an end and the funding is cut, and what happens to the activities? Ted Cantle came up with this new idea that he's dubbed interculturalism. Interculturalism is really different from multiculturalism because it can't be managed on a spreadsheet. It doesn't work in a kind of apply for funding, appoint a project manager kind of thing. But it's the way people actually live. It's messy. It doesn't have boundaries. You're working alongside. You're going to the football with people from other cultures. You're getting married, having relationships. There's a kind of interfaith, intercultural dimension that way. So this new term, or sort of relatively new term, interculturalism, some people who like to think that they're in control of this society, or like to see them as the ones who are directing how things develop, really don't like interculturalism because it's so unmanageable, it's so human, it's so everyday that you can't create a department to handle it, if you see what I mean. But it is the actual way that people live, and ordinary people live it. So it's not like being an academic thing that you read a book about it. And
it's real life. Yeah.
It's your day-to-day living. And that's more of a way of describing. Multiculturalism is prescriptive. It tells you how you should live. Interculturalism looks at how you actually live and tries to tell you, here's what we see when we look at you, rather than you should behave the way that we would like you to.
And there's a huge difference between integration and assimilation.
Yeah.
Integration doesn't necessarily mean you lose your cultural ideals, you lose your, you have to water down your cultural background, etc. It's about living with all of the differences. And, just coming back to what you were saying, at the end of the day, I think those people that don't like interculturalism probably have a somewhat more complicated view of what humanity actually is. For me, I feel like with all the different backgrounds in the city, all the different religions, all the different ethnicities, really our motives and our worries and our fears are one. Every single parent out there, regardless of religion and ethnicity, have the same fears and wishes for their children. They want to educate their children. They want their children to be happy. They want their children to be safe. So I feel like if you don't see the commonality, perhaps you can't see the interculturalism. But actually, I feel like we're all connected in so much deeper way than just.
So I'm going to ask you a question directly, both of you. Are you coexisting and are you fully integrated with your community in Leicester?
Am I fully integrated? Of course. So I'm Scottish. I'm from Glasgow. Because of the way I look, it's just assumed that I am the same as everybody in Leicester. I'm not integrated in the sense that after 30 or 35 years living in or around Leicester, I still have trouble making myself understood in shops.
That's to do with your accent.
Buses. Yeah, but
don't worry, I understand you really well.
Integrated, it's because you can read my lips from where you are. If I was to be integrated, I would change my accent to make it easier for other people. That's the thing about, or maybe that's assimilation. I would change to make it easier for everybody else to accept me. And I can't do that and kind of be honest with myself and with anyone round about me, because then I'm play acting, I'm impersonating.
Well, you know what the great Gandhi said, didn't he?
Do go on.
He said, be the change that you want to see in this world. Right? Be the change, be the change.
Sure.
And of course, everybody here in the community, before they go on to comment or complaint, they must always remember that. That's a fantastic statement. Be the change that you want to see in this world. Now, Charmaine, are you coexisting and fully integrated with the wider community in Leicester?
It really depends who you ask. I think I am. I think I'm true to myself. I'm proud Muslim Bangladeshi woman, but I don't feel like I have to apologize or water down any of my identity in this city. I feel like it's a welcoming environment, but then I have meaningful and close relationships with all members of all different communities. And that for me is true integration. Is when you can be proud of your background and your beliefs and still, feel at home.
We all got to ask, this question is for all of you listening in right now, that are you coexisting and are you integrated in the society, right? Now, speak the truth. Now, if you are integrated and coexisting, I want you all to put your right hand up. Otherwise, if your hand is down, then I'm going to be able to count and let you know. Yeah? So Sharmin's looking at me to say, well, how is he going to know if he's here in the studio and everybody's at home?
You're a very sensitive guy, right?
The digital revolution, So this is very important point that we think we are, but we're not. We're not. Mm-hmm. Now, all recent events that you will see about this situation in Ukraine, about the refugees. Well, I was a refugee in 1972, and of course, can't remember so well, but I can tell you now that it was a different dynamic at that time, right? Where the city of Leicester were telling us not to come to Leicester. There were marches on Melton Road.
Wow.
There was the National Front. They were saying, don't come to Leicester. We don't want you here. The city councillor or the city mayor or the leader of the council at that time, I don't remember his name, he was openly saying, don't come to the city of Leicester, we don't want you. And of course, guess what happened a couple of years later? Guess what happened?
You came down here.
We came in 72 and come around 73, 74, if somebody can correct me if I'm not right, there's never been a council led by the Blues ever since that time. Mm-hmm. Did you know that? That's an historical fact. Yeah, which brings it back to Charmaine because she's currently in that cabinet, right?
I'm not in the cabinet.
You're not?
No.
You're not in the cabinet. She's going to be in the cabinet. We make dua for her that she'll make it there. But she sits on that bench as well with the 54 of you, isn't there?
52 of us, Labour.
52 Labour, yeah. So then there are two others there which are not Labour. I think one is a Conservative.
Yep.
And one is an independent.
Lib Dem.
Mm-hmm. So do they get the same tea bag as the rest of you?
No, everyone gets the same treatment.
No, I said but not treatment, tea bag.
What do you mean by tea bag?
Like what quality and brand of tea bag do they
receive? No, everyone gets the same. We're a Labour-run local authority. We don't do things like that. We're not the Tories.
And are they allowed to dress up in their colours, like the Blues? They come in blue and...
Yeah, absolutely.
They're allowed to do that,
certainly it's very interesting being part of a council where there's majority Labour and there's one person, and it's usually the Lib Dem gentleman who has to do all of the opposition himself. And, despite our differences, I have to say
you would take that job on, wouldn't
you? Well, see, this is very interesting from my point of view because I did used to work for the City Council for 8.5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I worked for the City Council. Yesterday, I started in a new post for County Council. And at the job interview, the first thing that they said to me was, you do understand that you'd be working under a different colour of a political flag. And I said, well, you serve the public. And
right.
Talking about government is the channel for that.
Talking about colour, we have a visitor here for iftar today. You've seen him there in the production area. Now, he's one person who is currently redefining our race, color, creed, culture, tradition, and diversity. Mm-hmm. And we absolutely grateful that he's joined us for iftar today. He's Azim Rafiq. You all know him from the cricket. George, do you follow cricket?
I'm Scottish, so the answer to that is no.
No. Well, this is a very, very important issue. What you mentioned earlier and what you mentioned, George, race, color, creed, caste, culture, tradition, religion, nationalism, patriotism. Put them all together and you've got a broth, haven't you?
Or a war.
Yes, right, a broth that does not taste very well at all, right? So we all have to understand that tomorrow's world, the way we have to live we can't base it all around that formula, which is caste, color, creed, culture, tradition, religion, nationalism, patriotism. Those are going to not take us forward, they're going to take us backwards. Now, 50 years we've been here, from 1972 to present day today. Every 10 years, there's a new rule book or a new report that comes out, right? Every 10 years. Go back, which was the last 10 years in between 2010 to 2020? There was a rule book. In 2000 to 2010, there was another rule book. There's a report from here, a report from here. Now, the most recent one from this decade has been the George Floyd incident. So this is going to carry on unless we start to redefine the way we think, the way we have to behave, right? So
Indeed.
we are appealing to all the people listening in right now. If you are in public sector, in private sector, what Azim Rafiq's cricket story brought on the table when we started to support that whole story from 2 years ago is that we found that it was not only sports. This is what you mentioned earlier on, Charmaine, top down.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a societal issue, right? It's a societal issue that has been here yesterday and the day before and the day before. And we need to come to terms with it because private sector, public sector, and our sporting fraternities and our establishments, right? So this is what he has exposed in a manner which has never been done before. So you've seen cases from our judiciary, from our police, from our health, NHS. There are cases just springing up every day. So why do we have to wait, Charmaine, before we break an arm, break a leg, or we lose a life, before we wake up to what's going on in reality?
Well, actually, I think a lot of people are already awake. So one of the things that gives me faith and hope for the future is young people. Young people are a lot more attuned to these differences between different minorities and structural differences between the different experiences that minorities have. And I'm really excited to see young people take more of a role in the political world, local, national, and international. And once that happens in years and decades to come, I feel a lot of these issues will be they'll have a natural dying out, because I when I see young people, when I hear how they view the world and how they see the world, their world is a lot more interconnected than the worlds I or you grew up in, and they don't necessarily see the difference between the chances that they should have or a young boy in Syria or Yemen should have, and for me that's where the hope lies. It's easy to feel despair, but actually there's a lot of hope as well.
So I think we work together on this, because if the three of us here now and we do a program, we must have a name and an objective of that program and what happens hereafter. Radio we do for 30 days, but what can we achieve from that for the 11 months preceding us, right? So if we identify areas in our city that need to be looked at, we work on it together. So we go talk to these organizations and we see problems on issues of diversity and we deal with them, right? So we create an atmosphere where everybody talks about it, everybody acknowledges it, and we can then fix a problem. We can't fix it if it remains under the table. We have to have that ability to be frank about it.
I think that one of the big issues in Leicester is that people still don't feel a sense of belonging with everyone else. They will still separate things into certain parts of the city are...
But it can work both ways, George. It can work both ways. We are a city which today we found there's 70 languages spoken here in the city. So that's approximately nearly 100 diversities, right? So,
but really what I wanted to say about that is that it's up to the individual, because recently a friend commented to me that I'm naturally, culturally curious. When I see something I don't understand, most people kind of all back away and put their hands up. I go towards it. I want to know, how do these people live? What do they believe? How do they feel about where we are today and where we might be going? Because I think that if you approach people with courtesy, with respect, with politeness, and don't overdo it, but with some degree of affection in the way that you approach them, interest in who they are and what they want out of life, most people are very happy to open up and welcome you and take an interest in your interest in them. So I think that a lot of folk are still feel hemmed in. They still feel a bit trapped by that cultural or governmental or media way of doing things. But once you can free yourself from those controls, and it's not really that hard. Sometimes you don't even realise you're doing it. Take an interest in who you work beside. Take an interest in your neighbours. Just do a little step every day to break down those barriers, and it makes a real change for you and for others.
Well, here's a test for you now.
Oh.
Are you familiar with the HISR?
See all these acronyms.
Acronyms. I've never heard of
This is
one.
not an acronym. You can look it up, HISR. You
What
familiar
is
with
it?
it? It's very important. Now, we're going to do this work together as a team. We need to get to know and empower ourselves with what is going on around us, what happened yesterday, what happened the day before, and what we want to happen tomorrow. Yes? HISR, historic, institutional, systemic, racism. Right? That is what we have to deal with here. Are you up for that challenge, Charmaine?
Absolutely.
Or are you just kidding me? Or are you serious?
No, it's one of my biggest passions.
Are you
is
committed to
equality.
that project?
Totally committed.
It's a project, George.
100%.
How about? So if we can fix even one case somewhere, we'll be happy for it. Right? Now, the whole idea is that I agree with Charmaine that the young people are the ones we need to focus on, because if we don't get it right with the young people, they'll grow up carrying on with this nasty issues of HISR.
They'll tell us what to do. I feel like they have a broader view of the world than we do sometimes. So I'm sure they'll educate us as much as we'll try and help them.
That's right. So this is what I'd like us to do, is go away from here. We make a plan. And if we can carry with us 100 more people to join us, that we can be all better for it from our city, right? And we work on it together. Otherwise, we'll be reading books, we'll be watching TV, and we'll be listening to other people and say, oh, that's sad, I agree with that. But nothing ever is going to change. So we got to get together and force change. Not with violence, not with nasty words. We have to do this in the spirit of Ramadan. We have to do this with kindness. We have to do this with love.
With dedication,
Determination
determination. And it's part of our
Devotion.
detoxification process.
and detoxification. So now you understand the 3 Ds. Yeah?
Yeah.
The 3 Ds. So I don't want you to forget about them. The reason we use acronyms here, people never forget them. Once they memorize them, they'll remember them forever. So all of these, I haven't made them up. I learned them from people, right? And I learn it from them, and they stick in your head, don't they? And so on. So the best one that I learned was ATC, adapt to change. Or you're going to be an RTC?
What's that? Respond to change.
Resistance to change.
Oh, no,
resistance
no.
to change.
No, we're not those.
Because if you are, we're going to make you an RTM.
I've used
right?
up all my
What's an
resistance.
RTM?
RTM is return to McDonald's, right? So what you got to remember is, you're laughing, but I'm telling you something serious now. You go to McDonald's, what do they teach you? Dress up, wake up, dress up, show up on time.
Is this the same McDonald's that we're thinking of?
Yes,
Yes.
You know,
all of
different
them. They
McDonald's.
teach you that. They teach you discipline.
Is this as an employee or a customer?
Both, I would think. I would think both of them. So you learn your first disciplines, don't you? So when you start your first job, when you're 16, you learn that discipline immediately. Of course, you don't last there longer than 3 months, because after 3 months, you've had enough and you move on. But they do teach
Eating
you that.
chips off the
Yeah, so
floor.
if somebody came for a job to me and he told me that this is where he started his first job, he'd be going straight up the ladder, right? I'll give him a shout, because
He's
I
paid
know
his dues.
I know that he has come through a process of discipline. And of course, everything is about process and system, isn't it? You know the value of that in your career, in your journey of life.
My haphazard, accidental journey, yes.
Yeah.
That's still a process. Haphazardness is still a process.
So guys, I want us all to work together to make a difference, right? If we do that and we are serious about it, then good things will happen. So between this year and the next Ramadan, we got to have made some aims and objectives, Charmaine would make an excellent project leader. Right?
Watch The Apprentice. 'Cause
No,
she's
I actually don't.
the project manager whose head is on the block at the end of every episode.
I'm up for that. There's 3 of us here, so you're happy to vote her in for that task? I've nominated her.
Yeah, it's always good for the other people to put someone
So
else in.
this is live on Radio Ramadan on 87.7 FM. We've made a very good decision here today to make Charmaine the project leader of the HISR initiative, right? We call that the HISR initiative. That is Historic Institutional Systemic Racism. What we're going to do is we're going to identify and we're going to fix the problems, right? With help from other people, right? When you're stuck, what do we say here on the radio? Call a man who knows a woman. Right? And you'll get the job done. Yes, these are standard radio terminologies that work. They have a tried, tested, proven record, Charmaine.
Okay, I take your word for it.
Yeah. Well, George, are you up for that? What we've discussed today? We don't want this program to be a waste.
I'm always up for positive
Every
change.
program that I do has got to have a result. Otherwise, I don't want to waste my time. Time is precious.
I'm always up for positive change, and if it's somebody else who's doing it, that's just fine.
I think the subject area that we're talking about, HISR, I think there'll be lots of people in the city that are going to be passionate about that issue. So,
George, we're in the making of a revolution, right? A positive one, a loving one, right? And we can make some good progress here together, right, George? I know you are well into writing and scripting. You could even write us a song.
So, no.
Yeah.
I'm quite good at, you know that phrase, those who can't do, teach. So I'm a qualified teacher, which means that I'm definitely not a doer. Maybe I'll hum something. There used to be this comic, a musical comedian called Victor Borka, whom I used to love when he was a Swedish guy. He used to perform in concert halls in the tuxedo and all that. And I remember one episode of his show, and he's just walking across the stage, and he's just humming to himself. And he said, this is what Beethoven used to do. The only difference between him and me is he wrote his down. So if anybody comes up with a nice hum, a nice whistle, write it down, and that can be our theme for our HISR.
Right, guys, sadly, we're coming to the end of the program, so it's just really gone fast. And I'd like all of you listening in right now, that both of you spend 5 minutes, talk to Azim Rafiq. He's right there in the producer's chair, and talk to him. He'll start us off in this journey of HISR because he's beginning to do a lot of work in that field for the
lots to learn from
for the different organizations that he's spending his time because he wants to make a difference. And I greatly appreciate and love him for that, because that is making a difference from one's own experience to take that and to bring positives out of that. So many of you, if you've had bad, sad, unfortunate experiences out there, you got to turn things around and look at light at the end of the tunnel, and some positives will come out of it. And that you'll only do if you join with good people, right? So all of us, I think we have a journey to climb, a mountain to climb, as they say, and we all work together on that. So afterwards, anybody listening can come and join us for iftar today. And you can have the opportunity to meet Azim Rafiq and learn a few good nasihas, as they say, good advices from him to guide you for your future path. So, guys, thank you very much. This time next year, we need some 10 objectives. Charmaine, you're the boss. You detail them and let's knock them out. And I love the idea of working in partnership. So Peter Soulsby said, partnerships with the community, partnerships with the commercial sector. This is the way forward. This is how we're going to work together as a community. So I'm up for that.
Okay, let's do this.
I'm up for that partnership. So this is what we need to do, is create partnerships with the community, with the commercial sector, private sector, and with all our councillors and our MPs. Bring them on board on this, right?
Okay.
Are we up for that?
Yeah, we're adaptive to change, aren't we?
Yep, great, guys.
It's been like one long recruiting
Exercise.
and we're the first two in.
Guys, thank you very much for listening to